they're setting up a renewable energy zone in Western Victoria, which seems a very sensible thing. It could be good, but to build a transmission line back into where it connects into the grid, there's massive opposition, not to the renewables, but to the transmission line. We see the same thing with dams. We see, the same thing with so many other things. We also see, in some cases, a reluctance to pay the price that it might take to start to move us into that decarbonisation, the circular economy, and so many other things where we need to do at the moment. So, is this a failure of leadership that we can't get people to support, a vision in these areas, either to accept that they have to be part of the solution, or is there something else we can do?
Sorry, quickly go. Well, I think goes to Graham's point about 50% of Australians may well believe nuclear is a good thing to do or not. I mean, the question then, I'll leave it with everybody, should every decision be made by the people of all Australians voting on it? No. That's why we vote them in once and hopefully they make good decisions. So my view is leadership is actually doing many, many things that only 20% of Australians would believe in. So I don't believe in populism. I believe in electing a government, and if they do a shitty job, you vote them out, because we can't. And I fear at the moment that too many governments are looking over their shoulder and working out, are we in the 51% or 49%? I'd like to see leadership. And because I just don't think the average Australian is... I struggle to understand the topics we're discussing this evening. I just don't think the average Australian should have a say on most of these things. I think that they set up the broad objectives. We should have equity, we should have safety, we should have clean air. We could put point into the value system, but we're not there to make the micromanagement allocation decisions. I think that requires leadership.
When you talk about NIMBYism, one of my more interesting examples is that Bob Brown is campaigning against some wind farms in Tasmania because it's going to blight the landscape. I've also, from back in the early 80s, got a clipping where Bob Brown says, you don't need to dam the Gordon below Franklin, a small coal-fired power station would be the right answer. So you get some interesting positions on these sorts of issues, and it's politicians' jobs to negotiate around them. Now, if you keep making decisions the public don't approve of, you're not going to be an employed politician, or at least not employed to be in government for too long. So leadership only gets you so far. If by leadership you mean bravely defying the will of the public. I think I've got a dodgy line here. So that's kind of one issue. But the other issue I think we've got is too much leadership, in that we've got all these state governments and the federal government going in different directions and having conflicting policies. So the federal government says, yeah, we're going to meet our Kyoto undertakings, but the state governments say, oh no, we're going to get there twice as fast. And then they expect the federal government to run a federal system of electricity. That just can't possibly work. So we're all fighting with each other and trying to get political advantage out of this climate change business. And, I think that is a major problem. And we're not being straight and talking to people about what the real issues are. We're pretending that we can do things. We tell people that, if there was more political will, we could get it done in 10 years. Well, that's nonsense. You just couldn't possibly build the infrastructure to do it in 10 years, even if you devoted all the resources of the economy to it. If you put Australia on a wartime footing, you still couldn't do it in that period of time. It takes time for things to happen. So we've got a lot of pretend going on at the moment, and I don't think that's very helpful at all.
Maya, the audience is warming up, so...
Well, I think it is beholden on leaders to make the difficult choices. I mean, we talked about certainty and uncertainty before. In what realm of decision-making do you have certainty? In what realm is that a reasonable thing to ask for? Do you have certainty when you go to war? Do you have certainty when you launch a new tax? Do you have certainty when you launch almost anything that has to do with human beings, right? And so And so you have to ask yourself, what are we relatively certain about? What do we have relatively high degree of certainty about? What are the realities that we're dealing with? I agree about the time that it takes to build things, although the message I take away from that is then I guess we better get started. But it is beholden on leaders, and I think what I'd love to see most is the language of possibility, the language of invitation, rather than the language of fear. And I think that's a lot about what was so appealing to come to this debate tonight is, fear does not bring out our best characteristics. Optimism does, love does. And so where is the love in this future picture that we're heading towards? And I think it is beholden on our leaders to do the work, to translate what can be scary, what can be uncertain, what can be sad, into something that we can walk towards happily, something that we can walk towards with excitement, knowing that it's difficult, but knowing that it's worth the journey to get there. And I think of the example, forgive the yank bringing this up, but I think the example of Biden, right? As soon as he's elected, he walks out and says, when I'm talking about climate change, I'm talking about jobs. That simple, because he's done the work. He's done the work to figure out what it would take to make a net zero America. I think Robin mentioned that work. It's underway for Australia. It's similar to the work that we've done for Queensland. Done the work and seen where the job opportunities are, and he's gone to the coal-fired heart of Pennsylvania and sold that story and made it real and convinced the most skeptical person there that there's opportunity regardless of what you think about the uncertainties. And I think that's the opportunity for our leaders. How good would it be to have something that we were excited to go towards instead of all the things that we're afraid of falling into?